I just think across the board, they're starting five. I think this group has elevated beyond everybody else in college football. And frankly, I just don't think the conversation at one is that close with whoever would be sitting there in the second spot, third spot, or what have you. Hello and welcome in. It's always college football. Today is Thursday, June 19th. We appreciate those of you that are coming to us from wherever you're coming to us from. Well, that's the podcast platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcast. Like, rate, subscribe. All that stuff's awesome. We will automatically make sure that it's downloaded in your inbox, ready to roll every single time you get on that podcast platform and you're in your car, working out, whatever. We always want you to be able to have the show. We also are on the ESPN College Football YouTube page, so subscribe to the College Football YouTube page. You'll see our videos a couple times a week, and then we'll send you several other clip outs, just highlights from the show. If you can't watch the whole show, you can get it in bits and pieces. Today's going to be a really fun show. We've done our ranking series. We've done a bunch of positions. Today's one of our favorites and one of the most important. It's going to be the offensive line. And to help me break down the offensive line, I'm bringing in one of my best buddies, Cole Cubelic, host of the McElroy and Cubelic radio show in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm his co-host there, in case you can't connect the dots. He also is the host of the Cube Show, which is a podcast that does a great job of diving into SEC football on a week-in, week-out basis. He's the host of Read and React on SEC Network every single Monday night alongside Roman Harper throughout the fall. And then he also calls games on the SEC Network Prime game. That is almost always at night on the SEC Network each and every Saturday. So let's kick things off. Start with just big picture conversation about what's necessary to be successful in college football on the offensive line. Okay, he's one of my best buddies, host of the Cube Show podcast, host of McElroy and Cubelic in the morning on GAP 94.5. You can listen every single day on the GAP app. It's one of my best friends in the whole industry is Cole Cubelic. We talk ball. We bounce stuff off of each other all the time. And I don't think there's anybody in the world, and I mean that in the world, better at watching and observing offensive line play, critiquing offensive line play, and evaluating high-level offensive line play. So, Cole, we appreciate you. I don't think there's anyone that is more suited than to have this conversation with. So hopefully this is like your dream. We're going to rank offensive lines, give some honorable mentions, and do some superlatives. How's that sound?
Yeah, my dream is to do more digital talking with you. Yeah, that's what I'll wake up at night thinking, man, if we can make that happen, life will be good.
Well, we don't often just live in your favorite part of the game. So I guess we can find that as the silver lining, is that we'll dive into some offensive line play. That is me kind of getting outside of my comfort zone and leaning into yours. So if nothing else, we're avoiding the quarterback conversation, which is what we normally have together. So there's that, I think.
Is great. And I think it's also, you've kind of shown me how far behind I am and just how many things I need to catch up on, because as you and I both know, we're never going to catch up on all these names. Like, it's literally not going to happen. So you're just trying to figure out new faces, new places, where they are, where they've been, what they've done, schematically what they've done. It's not just watching them on film and what they are as a player. How are they going to fit into where they are? How long have they been there? All that stuff's going to come into play with our conversation today.
Well, we'll start there as kind of a jumping off point, because there's going to be some fan bases that are real frustrated with the list I've put together. Just going to be completely honest. There's going to be people that will look and cite the stars that their players may have, albeit some have never even played in a college game, but because they had 5 stars, they are clearly better than the guy they're replacing, when ultimately, when evaluating these guys, I put a high premium on returning production, and I put a really high premium on continuity. Not everybody has that, but there are some teams that will be given the benefit of the doubt based on projection, because we've seen some of their new starters at other places, and they're clearly super talented. So how do you value proven production at the place that we're gauging it at versus the potential upside that you might get with the transfer player?
You almost value that experience a little bit more now than you do the overall ability. And part of that, Greg, is because offensive line play just in general has gone downhill a little bit. There are a lot of reasons for that. The ability to do it full speed, practice, whether it's spring practice, fall practice during the season, is so limited now. Also, you have just guys spending less time with individual coaches. So it's not just being around your teammates, but it's also that coach, what he's going to want from you, how he's going to ask you to do things. That can be verbiage. That can be where a step goes. That can be where your hat placement is, your hand placement. You're going to call different things, different checks. You're going to have different names for different techniques that you use. Some coaches want you to use a technique. Other coaches don't want you to use it. There can be some value in that, in just understanding how to block guys different ways. But as far as that rhythm, that continuity, that chemistry, that feel together, which has to happen to be a great offensive line, it's just rare to find. We've got hurry up, no huddle offenses, spread offenses. We've got read offenses, whether that's reading to handoff or pass, reading to handoff or keep and run, pop passes, all of these things that are circumventing just moving bodies, which is ultimately what I think it should have to take for you to be a great offensive line. So some guys go off and do that, whether it's high school or one college, and they go to another one, they're asked to do different things physically. You might not acclimate to that very well. It might be difficult for you. So I do think that not only being around guys doing things that you're doing, but just being around the game full speed, knowing what it's going to be like. And I think sometimes if you go play a year in the Mountain West, you go play a year in the Sun Belt, and then you move into the SEC or the Big Ten, that can be more valuable than being a 5-star tackle coming in out of high school, because you know what those pass rush moves are going to look like. You know what having to reach a 3 technique is going to feel like. And at least that player you've been doing it against is a lot closer than what a lot of the high school guys coming in are going to. So you've heard me say this. I think it's the biggest jump coming in, being asked to play, is offensive line. I think it's the most difficult position to come in and play, mainly because of the guys you're going up against. So when you have a better feel of that, I think it puts you way ahead of the curve.
Yeah, there's just no way to simulate in high school. You could show me all the footage you want of Under Armour camp or Nike Combine camp or individual pass rush drills in these special showcases that they do throughout the country. That's not realistic reps. So I'm with you. There will be several teams left off this list that are probably sitting there thinking, what, we should be a top 5 unit because we have a 5-star coming in that's going to be our right tackle. That doesn't mean anything to me. I'm a see it to believe it guy. And there is some projection, like I said, but we will kick it off with our honorable mentions. We'll start here with the group that I loved last year. It's Indiana. Granted, yes, there are 3 new starters more than likely in place from center, right guard, and right tackle, but all 3 of those guys that will be joining the rotation all played at the Power 5 level. One from Ohio State, and Zen Michalski, the right guard from Colorado, and Khalil Benson and Pat Coogan, who played good reps for Notre Dame. He'll slide in there at center. And then you have your left side that's back entirely intact, including Carter Smith at left tackle, who's got a chance to be a legit all Big Ten type of candidate. So I like their offense. I like their style. And Cole, that was a group I really liked last year. So right now projecting a bit, but assuming that the culture maintains, I think they'll be in a good position to be in the mix for one of the top offensive lines in the country at season's end.
I'm with you. I was a big fan of Indiana's group last year, Greg, and didn't think that it was carried by one individual, 2 individuals with just their talent, their ability. They worked together extremely well, and rarely do you find a read-based system that finishes the way that they did. I thought they did a great job playing through the whistle. I love the addition of Pat Coogan. Versatility, has played some guard, has played some center. He'll bring leadership. And the 3 that you mentioned, I think from a talent perspective, Indiana might be upgrading just overall ability. Now, it's not the end all be all, like you said earlier, but it could be something where if they gel together early, they might be able to sort of take off. The thing I like about this with Indiana, you would rather have to go into this system than from this system somewhere else. Like if Coogan was going from Indiana to Notre Dame, and all of a sudden going to be asked to be a north-south blocker, and he hadn't done that a lot of times, and he had to back off because of some of the RPO game, you have a little more concern. I think you can teach these guys to maybe hold their water for a step or 2, not go downfield as fast or as often because of that RPO game, and they can fit in a little bit easier. So I have high expectations for Indiana's group again.
Yeah, it should be a good group. We'll keep it in the Big Ten. Second on the honorable mention list, Illinois. Part of what I like is I've seen all 5 guys play together in the past. All 5 guys return. They've added some depth. And all those guys that played high level last year, including their left tackle, J.C. Davis, I think that continuity is going to probably increase. Now, granted, this was a group that was at times a little inconsistent running the football last year. I would like for them to collectively be better. But knowing that they've played a full year in this system and have had some success, I'm pretty optimistic about them being a little more balanced and probably a little more capable to move teams off the ball running the football this year.
All right, let's just look at a couple of the intangibles here because there's a lot of things we can talk about with a lot of these groups, and rarely we're going to go this route. Number one, your head coach is essentially an offensive lineman at heart. Yeah, he played tight end, whatnot, but played some defense. But that's kind of his personality and his makeup. So he's never going to get too far away from winning the line of scrimmage and being physical. I love Josh Kreutz playing center. His dad, one of the nastiest offensive linemen in the history of the NFL. A guy in Olin that you just love to watch play, love the way he played the game for the Bears back in the day. So I just think at their core, this group almost gives you a little bit more in their DNA as far as chances to go be a good group. I've told you I have high expectations for this team in general this year, but this could be a group, as you stated, they could lean on a little bit more because the wherewithal, because the understanding. Maybe don't have to have tight ends locked in as much to be able to help with certain things. Maybe don't have to lean on quarterback run as much to sort of force the defenses to play them a certain way. They might just be able to move people. And if that's the case, Illinois got a chance to have a pretty good year this year.
Love that. Moving on next to the Big 12, and there's a handful of groups in the Big 12 I like, but I really like Baylor. And knowing that you have from right guard all the way to left tackle, all those guys are back for the 5 returns, still figuring out what the right tackle looks like. But knowing Jake Spavital, their offensive coordinator, this is not going to be a group where they put a ton on their plate as far as winning games. But knowing that they have a 1,000-yard back from a year ago, that's going to be helpful. You got a quarterback that can be mobile when he needs to be. That can be helpful. So I think the blend with what this group might be asked to do, they might not be able to just move you off the spot 6-7 yards downfield, but I do think collectively with how they'll blend together and the experience returning, Baylor's got a chance to have a solid group in the Big 12.
Love Sidney Fugar out there at left tackle. You mentioned 4 or 5 back. I think over 3,600 snaps played with this group. My only question here really is, what do they get away from that they've been good at? You and I love the stretch play. It's one of our favorite plays, probably our favorite run play, because it opens up so much more. Talking to Mason Miller, who's the new offensive line coach, they're not going to bail on it. They're not going to get away from it. And when you've got guys that have done it, you don't want to do that because it takes a long time to rep it and get good at it and understand it and have a feel for how it's going to operate, especially when those backs have good feel for it as well. So taking that and then putting that in with some of the air raid concepts that Spavital is going to bring in the passing game that Mason Miller has also coached for Mike Leach in as an offensive line coach, they really have a chance, Greg, I think, to kind of morph multiple offenses in that can assist with the offensive line. So I don't know if they're going to do any more out of a 3-point stance than they have in the past, probably more out of a 2-point stance, which a lot of guys are going to like. I don't think it helps you as much in the run game, but the experience will allow versatility and allow them to sort of morph these offenses together. It's a group that really does have a chance to be good this year.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like them a lot. A group that I loved last year. I do think they're a little bit limited as far as talent is concerned across the board, but I love the edge they play with. And it's Arizona State. And I had a really hard time not having this group in my top 10. I think they played phenomenal down the stretch last year. They didn't get near enough credit with how they handled Texas in the front along the defensive line. That's a good group. I thought they played well against the Longhorns. I think they played well against Iowa State, who was solid as well. I think they played well down the stretch pretty much throughout the entire month of November. And Arizona State brings back most of what were the heavy contributors last year. So I also think just Dillingham's identity, trying to run the football with tempo and playing a little bit with the chip on your shoulder, it's easy to like the Sun Devils. And frankly, probably am going to hear an awful lot about them not being in the top 10 because they have a really good case to be made.
You have an offensive line coach that played and coached in the lower levels of college football for a long time. So haven't had a chance to be around him, don't know him very well, but you can imagine that chip on the shoulder is there. That edge is always there, always trying to prove yourself, always adding a little bit extra. The thing I love about this group is they don't try to be something that they're not. They know what they need to be, and they know what they have to be. You got to be able to pin. You got to be able to pull. So block back, wall off, get out in space, and that includes in the passing game because you're going to get a lot of heavy play action, bootlegs. You're going to have to pull and protect a lot of different times, which that forces you to have to move east and west to be able to wall that defender off of your quarterback. Also, give the quarterback a lot of credit, Greg. When I study this group, man, he trusts the hell out of those guys. Like Sam Levitt will step up in the pocket. He will hold on to the football. Now, he's great moving around and scrambling, but when he needs to, he trusts that group in the pocket, and that's what opens up a lot of their shots down the field. I absolutely love Ben Coleman at center. You're talking about a young man that transferred in, sat out, I think, around 650 days before he played between games last year, really grew as the season went on. He could really kind of explode this year and become one of the better centers in college football. He's a big, wide-bodied kid that has great lateral movement, a ton of power. I think he is a great anchor, even if you're going to lose a piece or two, that you start with right there. And there's a kid they're bringing in named Jameto Abigbo. And this is exactly what we talked about before. This young man blocked for Lindsey Scott at UIW a couple of years ago. He played 13 games, started for Texas State last year. He's played both guard spots. He's played both tackle spots. And he's a nasty dude. Like, I've watched his film. He understands how to come off the ball. They have good length at their tackle spots. They really have a tackle playing right guard, but he moves extremely well and knows how to use his hands. I just think they know who they are. They get out in space and they attack you. They don't loaf. They don't tiptoe on counter plays or trap plays. They know how to kick out. They know how to wrap and get upfield and chase people down. And they give you that extra effort down the field as well. It wasn't just Scattaboo with all the extra effort. A lot of times it'd be those linemen downfield trying to find an extra body or two to clean up on. But you start with Coleman in the middle and you only lose one starter, but you bring in a Big Bo that apparently is going to replace him, a guy that I think has like over 27 career starts. I think this group's going to be just fine, has a chance to be better than they were a season ago, and they were vastly underrated last year.
Yeah, it's a scary thought. If they're better than last year, they can be a huge problem, especially as they're trying to recreate that identity of toughness and physicality like they had down the stretch last year. Two more, both in the Big Ten here in the honorable mention category. Notable omission, the Tennessee Volunteers, not listed right now in the honorable mentions. And frankly, let's just cut to the chase, not listed in the top 10 either. I'll get your response to that here in just a minute. But let's start with Iowa. Iowa's a bit of a projection. I'm kind of going with the track record that we've seen from Iowa. Yeah. They already have both tackle, left guard, right tackle, and center handled. I feel good about those three spots. I feel pretty good about right guard with Cade Piper coming in. Not a ton of tape on him last year, but what he did put on tape, I liked. So I think he's going to be a good spot. The problem is I just don't know exactly how it's all going to shake out at left tackle. But Iowa, kind of a group I've just come to trust over the course of time. And I would just feel like any list that didn't include them among the top groups in the entire country would be a list that was incomplete.
When you've been doing the same thing as long as they've been doing it and doing it well, the chances of you really slipping and not being successful with that are going to be slim. Once again, let's start at center, the anchor, Logan Jones. I can remember seeing him as a backup to Tyler Linderbaum like 3 years ago when he got in games late. And I was like, man, I love this kid's lateral quickness. You got to be able to reach the nose guard or the defensive tackle if you're going to play center in this offense, because the outside zone play is going to be really what you build everything off of. And you got to be able to get out in space because you're going to be asked to pull. You're going to be asked to do some things in the screen game, and he does it well. Now he's an all-conference player that's added a little bit more strength. I think he's one of the better centers in college football going into this season. Jennings Dunker has held down the right tackle spot forever. Could have gone to the NFL. I think with those two right there, just sort of setting the tone, you know exactly what you're going to be. It's okay to project some groups when the same pieces, the same parts have been there. The mentality's the same, the technique's the same. So I'm with you. I think Iowa has a chance to be one of the better offensive lines in the Big Ten. How some of those new pieces fit in depends on how much further past that they may be able to go.
Yeah, and then finally, Ohio State, who I have in the honorable mention category. They're always going to have top-level talent coming in from the high school. And at first, they were not included on the honorable mentions. Then upon doing a little bit more of a dive, you don't look at they have one returning starter on paper, but if you actually look at how many guys played meaningful minutes down the stretch because of some of the injuries they had to overcome last year, they're actually coming back in pretty good shape. You get your center back in Hinsman. Luke Montgomery's going to slide in there at left guard. You got Taker Shabola in there at right guard. So your interior three, I feel great about. And tackle at times, yeah, let's be real. At times, tackle last year was a bit of a headache, but they eventually got things sorted out. I kind of just trust this offense in general to find talented pieces. And at tackle, I think they can overcome guys that might have the occasional lapse in high-level play. We've seen it in the past. So Ohio State's a team kind of giving the benefit of the doubt to, but I feel good about it given the way they've recruited and the talent they can assemble.
I love how they have been super selective with individual offensive linemen in the portal and been successful with it. I mean, you go out to San Diego State to get a tackle. I'm sure a lot of people were thinking, no way that kid's going to transfer in and be able to be what we think he can be or be an elite Big Ten level tackle. And he was until he got banged up. Seth McLaughlin had played, 3 years of football at Alabama, had started a ton of games. The wherewithal was going to be completely there. He comes in, and I've talked to Seth about it on my podcast. He said they wanted me to come in and be a leader. They wanted me to come in and interject some fight. And it was actually just that. I mean, there's one instance that Seth told me about that he came back to. They were running inside drill, and he told the rest of the guys, he said, hey, we're fighting at the end of this play. And they just kind of looked at him. And this is, I think, in fall practice, getting ready for the season. And whatever play they ran, he finds somebody, tees off on them, and they start going at it. And then he goes back to the huddle and literally cusses his guys out. He's like, what are y'all doing? Like, when I say we're going to fight, we fight. The other 4 guys got to come in there and help me and go. So he interjected some of that attitude and demeanor that Ryan Day thought was needed, and he brought that. So now you try to go find that either at Minnesota or at Rice with 2 new tackles coming in. My bigger question mark, Greg, is just what's the offense going to be and going to look like? Because Chip Kelly's gone, and we saw almost 3 Chip Kellys just at Ohio State last year with how they started and then in the middle and then how they finished. So we know what you're going to have at receiver. We have a pretty good idea at running back and quarterback. I just want to see what the offense is going to ask of this group and then how quickly they can get comfortable with it. Because like you said, the talent is going to be there.
Yeah, it certainly is. I do want to hit you on one omission so far, not on the honorable mention category, but one that I know that you've heard a lot about from their fan base in some cases. It's Tennessee. I just can't at this point get on board right now knowing for sure that a true freshman, 5 stars or not, can step right in and be a complete difference maker. I don't know that. They replace some nasty at guard. They replace a game changer, I think, with what they do offensively at center. So I just can't at this point include them in my honorable mention. Are you okay with that?
100% okay with that. I had my top 5 SEC offensive lines a couple weeks ago. Tennessee fans didn't like it that they weren't there. But when I've covered Cooper Mays for 2-3 years, and sometimes he was dinged up, banged up, and the reoccurring theme with everybody in the facility is we don't have anybody else that can do what he can do. And that's not just physically, it's mentally, it's emotionally. You wonder about how that's going to be now with him permanently being gone. Javonte Spraggins, he was good for a penalty 2 per game. But you know what? He brought some attitude and he brought some spunk and he brought some fight to that group. And I think it helped and it interjected into everybody else to let them sort of be that way on a more consistent basis. John Campbell's a road grader. I mean, John Campbell moved people last year. Now, was he the most disciplined and consistent in pass pro? Maybe not, but he brought a lot of the attitude and the demeanor. You also got extra help from your tight end group last year, which some are back, but not all are going to be back for. So let's not forget you had the offensive player of the year in the backfield who's not going to be there for Tennessee. And I do think the O-line helped a lot with that. But there are a lot of voids to be filled in that Tennessee offensive line. And I'm confident in the scheme system, the way that they run it, confident in how Glenn Ellerby coaches it. But I'm with you. That's just too much to replace to say that a freshman is going to be able to come in and make that kind of a difference. Look at Zalance Hurd, who's going to start at tackle for them. He didn't come into LSU and make a difference, and he was ranked like that. He was that kind of a guy coming in. So just can't really not in this league, man. Not with the edge dudes you're going to see in this league. It's almost impossible to come in and be that kind of a player at that spot.
All right, you've heard your honorable mentions. You've heard the notable omission. Now it's time to get into the top 10. And I want Cole to basically push back if he wants to. If he wants to agree, that's also totally great. Cole, of course, the very best. You can also check out his work on the SEC Network. He does an incredible show on Monday, every single Monday of the football season on the SEC Network alongside Roman Harper. They just do an awesome, awesome job. So very, very grateful to have him and one of my best buddies. We just like talking ball. We'll do this over the phone. And in addition to the 15 hours a week we spend on the radio. Let's start at number 10. I'm going with the Oregon Ducks. And I understand that there's a lot to replace there. I understand what they had last year. I also know that Oregon probably does as good a job as any identifying traits in the portal and being able to go after and kind of get whoever they want. I think they got arguably the best tackle prospect in the portal in Isaiah World, who's going to start at left tackle for him. I think you can make a case that the addition from Texas State at right tackle and Alex Harkey is going to be a great addition as well. Emmanuel Pregnant, I think, had some good moments at SC. You also have a couple guys back that have played at a ridiculously high level in their center and in the right guard spot. So Oregon's a team that right now I'm willing to roll the dice on because of the upside of some of the new additions. Cole, Oregon at 10, how are we feeling?
Also, track record. We talked about it with some other groups. You've had the mentality, the behavior, the demeanor for a while now. And when history continues to repeat itself, it's okay to give them a little bit of a flyer. And my main concern here would have been the two tackles that are going to be gone, who I will say on the left side, maybe a little more inconsistent at times than the right side, but still you got good play the majority of the time. I did not expect to see from Isaiah World what I got when I went to watch him. The ability to change direction, the lateral movement at his size, which is monstrous. I was shocked, and I will be surprised if he's not first or second team all Big Ten as far as one of the tackles on that list, because he has every bit of God-given ability to be able to do it. And he has those snaps. He's put those snaps in the bank, so he understands what it's all going to be about. This is not an overly difficult ask either as an offensive lineman. You're not going up against elite edge guys and they're asking you to take pass sets and be in one-on-ones 25, 35 times a game. There's a lot inside of this offense that can protect the offensive line at times, and then they like to kind of lean on you a little bit later. So you have your anchor back in Laululu at center. I think that's a great starting point. And you interject Isaiah World, who I'm just going to say it, Greg, I think actually could end up being an upgrade when it's all said and done. I'm that high on his ability, and he plays the game the way it's supposed to be played. A lot of times these high-level, high-talent guys, we're a little worried about how they play the game. They want to look cool, and they don't want to finish blocks. You're not going to get that with this young man. He's going to give you every bit of the demeanor that you're asking for.
No, I love hearing that. I think they're going to be great. I love their offensive system and how they kind of build it around the offensive line and use that offensive line's talent and athleticism out in space as well. At number 9, it's the Clemson Tigers. I could probably start and finish this reasoning with the head coach or with the head coach of the offensive line, Matt Luke. Usually any group that he's in charge of, I feel pretty good about. What an addition he's been for Dabo Swinney the last couple of years. They bring back 4 out of 5. I'm not concerned at all about the positions that return. They don't put that much on the offensive line, but I do think this is a group that can, in the ACC, impose their will. And the one guy they have to replace is at left guard. Well, you lose Marcus Tate, who's a good player. In comes Harris Sewell. He's logged 1,000 career snaps in the Clemson uniform. So I think based on continuity, protection, offensive line success under Matt Luke, I feel really comfortable. I wouldn't normally have Clemson in the top 10, but this year I do at my number 9 spot.
Well, and there's a part of this when we're grading offensive lines, looking at offensive lines, and I can tell you, being a part of the Joe Moore Award Committee, we've really had to do a much better job of this, and it's a conversation that we've almost been hard on each other about, and that is judging groups for who they are, not necessarily what we think they should be. Yeah. Army winning the Joe Moore Award last year is a perfect example of that. Could they go out there and run Notre Dame's offense the way they do? No, they couldn't. And then there's been other offenses in years past that Notre Dame couldn't go run what they run the way that they do. Probably like 2019 LSU would be an example of that. So when you watch how this group operates, it might not be as favorable or fun to watch as a couple of other groups, but Matt Luke has brought a little bit more of that glass eater mentality. I thought it was an amazing hire by Dabo, and he was able to go get a former head coach and just a veteran offensive line coach. I think you're right about the left side. I like Tristan Lee at left tackle. I think he can be one of the better tackles in the ACC, and you plug in a guy next to him who, when you lose one, has played a ton right there for that group. So experienced quarterback now with 4 or 5 experienced offensive linemen up in front of him has a chance to take a step. And we haven't seen this group be great a lot of times when the offense has been great. So if they do excel, watch out for what that Clemson offense might have a chance to be.
Yeah, I think it's got a chance to be one of their better groups they've had. Just all things considered, I really believe that. At number 8, I'm going with the Auburn Tigers. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that a lot of guys are back. I thought last year's group collectively at season's end was playing really good football. I think Dylan Wade and Connor Liu, once those guys kind of settled into the spots that they ended up settling in at, Connor Liu at center in particular, that was a huge difference maker. They finally figured out left tackle. It was a huge problem spot throughout the first 6, 7, 8 games last year. They finally get one guy out, put another guy in, and everything seems to calm down. You bring in a couple of quality transfers from Virginia Tech and SC, and now all of a sudden I think Auburn went from at best a middle tier group in the SEC last year to a group that could very easily make an argument to be in the top 5, maybe even the top 3 by season's end. So this is a group that I think is going to be significantly improved on week 1 from where they were a year ago. And from what their starting point at week 1 is here, and last year their ceiling was here, that ceiling might be way higher, and they could be one of the better groups in the country.
They have that chance. They really do. I think Connor Lew, one of the more athletic centers in the SEC, love the way the young man plays the game. He's got great body control, great balance, and he's got two guys that can move people next to him. You mentioned Dylan Wade. I think he's better suited at guard just because of that athleticism and playing with the mentality that he does kind of fits that spot a little bit more. He was opening his hips a little bit too much, trying to be a little bit too aggressive with his upper body at tackle. It's a nice fit for him. And then too, some of the stuff they do out in space, he has the speed and agility to be able to get out there and help you do that. Jeremiah Wright is a road grader. I mean, he is a literal bulldozer. He is a guy that wants to punish you. He wants to hurt you. He's the only player in the history of college football that I have seen attract a personal foul penalty on a full slab, which is when another defender was engaged with a blocker and he came over and helped in pass protection and knocked him on their ass. I haven't seen another player ever pull that off, and I'm going to call it an accomplishment because I absolutely love it. You mentioned upgrading the tackle spots. You go out and get Mason Miller from USC, who I thought had a solid year last year. You get Xavier Chaplin from Virginia Tech. You may have upgraded at both of those spots. But what that does, Greg, is now you take Tyler Johnston and you take Tutal Miller, Xavion Miller. You could legitimately have a backup left tackle and a backup right tackle, which is that adds a ton of value because not a lot of schools have that. Most teams are going to have a swing tackle. A lot of teams are just going to have a backup guy other than center. If it's one of the two guard spots or the two tackle spots, he's just next in line to come in and play because he's the next most talented guy and you have to have him in there. You want to try to avoid the drop off. Auburn has real depth this year. All the positions, maybe minus center, but I feel great about their guard depth and I feel great about their tackle depth, which is something not a lot of teams can say. And now they've been with Jake Thornton for a couple of years. They've been in this offense multiple seasons now. I'll say this about Auburn. I'm not stamping my confidence and approval right this second, but I will absolutely give you that they have the opportunity to be there. All things are aligned for that group to be really good this fall. It's just on them to be able to go out and do it now.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing them. I think it's going to be a group that could really be, we talk so much about the receivers, so much about the quarterback. I think they're only going to go as far as their offensive line goes in that system. And I think that group has a chance to collectively be so much better than they were. You go to one of the best teams in the country, I think, on paper coming back this year, and it's Penn State. They're at number 7. I look at this group, and there were so many great moments last year. There were a lot where you're like, all right, this is a legit Big Ten championship contender along the line of scrimmage. They've had that defensively for a while. I just don't feel like their offensive line has traditionally been a group that's going to just impose their will. But I do think with some of the pieces that are back this year, they could actually make a case. I look at Nick Dawkins at center, guy that's been around for 6 seasons. I like the way he just has that presence there in the interior. I love Vega Ioane at left guard. I think he's got a chance to become a star. He's big, strong, physical, all that stuff. At right guard, you should kind of figure out where things are. You lose Sal Wormley, but I think Sal Wormley had some ups and downs. You now bring in a guy named Cooper Cousins, who is very highly regarded as well. You also have some depth with the transfer from A&M and TJ Shanahan, and then the tackle spots are solidified as well. So I think this is a group that traditionally they would not be in this conversation, not that dissimilar to Clemson, but I feel like with some of the unknowns and the amount of other teams that are relying on transfers, with what's coming back for Penn State, I feel a little bit more comfortable having them in the top 7 right now.
Well, on your side, you're also going to have a quarterback that knows how to direct traffic. He's going to have you in the right calls. You're going to run the ball to the right spots the majority of the time. You might not have as much oomph at tight end helping you out with Tyler Warren gone. All the athleticism stuff was great, but in line, he was also great and not afraid to really get after people. But I think continuity is going to be key. My only question, it's not even really a concern, will be Andy Kotelnicki. Is he going to lean on this group? Is he going to go out there and let them try to win games? I think they can do it. I think they can be that kind of a group. Like you said, they grew across the course of last season because when I peeked at them early last year, it's okay. You got Singleton and company, a stable of great backs, a good tight end, a quarterback making good decisions. They don't have to be very good. And then when you watch them going into the postseason, it was a group that had really morphed and changed. So I like what they run offensively. You're always going to get things that's going to keep the defense guessing and thinking. And good God, do I love that as an offensive lineman. Like, get a little bit of weight off that hand of that defensive lineman. Get those eyes looking left and right just a little bit so he can't tee off on me every time. And we forget sometimes what a benefit that can be. with those linebackers peeking out to the slot, not as worried much about inside zone, or the defensive ends maybe worried about a tight end blocking down on them as opposed to just taking on that tackle one-on-one. You get those guys thinking a little bit, looking east and west. That can be a huge advantage for that offensive line when you do decide to attack north and south.
Yeah, I love it. I think Kotelnicki, they got more rugged as the season went along, it felt like. They kind of knew, all right, this is what we got. Now we're going to kind of move forward a little bit. It's like they learned from their mistakes in the Ohio State game and morphed from that point forward. I'm hoping that morph kind of happens in the preseason this year and they lean heavier on that group to start things out. All right, last one before we get to the top 5. And at number 6, I have the Miami Hurricanes. Now, I'm a Mario Cristobal fan. I know he has his detractors, but I like the way his offensive line plays. I've always liked the way his offensive line plays. I've seen guys that can't play go and play for Mario, or guys that didn't play well go and play for Mario. All of a sudden, they have their best years. That's why I'm always going to remain optimistic about the type of development that they have with him and Coach Mirabel as his offensive line coach. I love their right tackle, Francis Maui-Noa. He's been there forever. We've seen him play a ton of football. Both guards are back. Feel great about those guys. You bring in Brockermeyer from TCU to kind of be the chess piece there in the middle at center to kind of help think your way through things and communicate with Carson Beck, the new quarterback. Do have to kind of figure out how left tackle is going to play. That is one position that you got to keep a real close eye on, knowing that Carson Beck's coming back from injury. But I still think that this group collectively, I just trust Mario. I trust Coach Mirabel. And I think this group by season's end will have probably a top 5 unit in the country.
It goes back a little bit to what we referenced with Illinois, is when you have just that kind of a DNA inside your facility every day, you have one of the better offensive line coaches in all of college football, and then you have a guy as your head coach that was one of the better offensive line coaches in all of college football. So I don't have too many concerns about it. We've seen a little bit of plug and play, whether it was some of those Penei Sewell offensive lines at Oregon, whether it was some of the offensive lines with Ryan Kelly and those guys at Alabama. Like, Mario knows how to find the other guy and fit him in. The only thing I'm interested to see is how Carson Beck sort of fits in, because Cam Ward was the ultimate field general last year, and some of the ad lib stuff made life easier at times. He was able to escape the rush. He was able to make you right a lot of the times. Now, I will say, Greg, you can flip that around, and a quarterback who is a little more stationary, and I know where he's going to be, and I know, by God, where I have to protect, that can make life a little bit easier on you. I have confidence in Markel Bell at left tackle. I think getting Brockermeyer and bringing him in, understanding what you needed at center right there with a guy that has a ton of experience, great quickness and agility, is going to be able to help you out at the point of attack. I just want to see what Shannon Dawson does with the offense. Is it going to be as north-south in the run game as it was last year? Because you had Arroyo that you could utilize in some of the play action stuff and stretch the field down the middle. We know Restrepo wasn't afraid to work the middle of the field. Some of those guys not going to be there. And then that quarterback who was calling the shots not going to be there. I think the offensive line is going to be fine. To me, the only real concerns with this might be just how do all the pieces come together in its totality offensively. What are you going to run? How are you going to run it? What's your mentality going to be? And then let that group kind of go out there, set themselves up early, and be the group that you follow throughout the course of the season. They proved it early against Florida last year. And they had some must-have moments, and you watch them and said, all right, that group's going to be able to get you wins. I'm interested to see how early they allow that group to do that for them this season.
So I just, so we have transparency here, I have not sent Cole any of the teams. We are going totally off the cuff. His reaction is purely authentic. So I would ask him normally here, hey, what are the notable omissions? I'm actually going to hold that until we get through 5 through 1, because I don't want him to be like, well, where's this team? And then they're coming up here in the next 5. So we'll hold off for the moment. We'll take a quick break and we'll come back, finish 5 through 1, and then hear how badly I got it wrong from Cole Cubelic in a moment. Okay, Cole Cubelic joining us again here on Always College Football. Cole does an amazing job. Read and React SEC Network on Mondays, does an amazing job calling the games on SEC Network on Saturdays alongside Tom Hart and Jordan Rogers. Has a podcast, The Cube Show, that you can check out. Awesome dive really deep into the SEC. And then, of course, the McElroy and Cole Show in the morning, which is just the greatest radio show of all time. Who his co-host is on that, I don't recall. But we will now get into our top 5. If you've missed it up to this point, 6 was Miami, 7 was Penn State, 8 was Auburn, 9 was Clemson, and 10 was Oregon. Then we had a handful of notable omissions. So that's where we're at here at the moment. But let's finally get into the top 5 offensive lines here in the 2025 preseason heading into the season. At number 5, I have the Utah Utes. Kind of a safe bet, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
This is the group that at times last year has had some ups and downs. There were just challenges throughout the season last year. I'm going to treat that year for Kyle Whittingham and company as the anomaly. I think they bounce back this year in a big way. Devin Dampier at quarterback should help with that because of his mobility. But I also look to when you bring back all 5 of your starting offensive linemen, and I would imagine just knowing that place, knowing the culture that's been created in that place, they've been told all offseason how terrible they are. And I have a feeling they're going to be out to prove a point this season. You have an amazing right tackle back in Spencer Fano. You have Caleb Lomu back at left tackle. Those 2 guys are back to kind of anchor the side. And then the interior, you have 3 guys that have played a ton of football, as well as Togi at left, at right, and then Moka Fisi at right guard. At center and right guard, respectively, So you have all 5 back from a group that's been told all offseason that you couldn't do what you needed to do. Plus, you now have a really mobile quarterback option. I happen to think Utah is going to be a big-time group in the Big 12 this year.
I wouldn't disagree with you. And like you said, that mentality has been there. There's one thing that Jim Harding's group have always done, and it's fight you. You'll get a couple of club bouncers in the future when you watch the Utah offensive line operate. And I'll say last year, it was a tough study at times because it was fun to watch, but technically and fundamentally, it got away from them at times. It was sloppy at times, and it would really be in and out at different points in times during a single game, not just the season, but the ability is there. The experience is there. You mentioned Spencer Fano. He's awesome to watch at right tackle. He's one of the best in college football. I didn't think he was going to come back. The fact that he is back is going to be massive for that group. And you have really confidence in every spot along the offensive line because they've played somewhere, somehow, sometime. And the system's not going to change. And the offensive line coach doesn't change. So the technique and the verbiage is all going to be the same. They just got to clean some things up. And if they do that, they'll be on the same page. They'll operate in a little bit of a better manner. And life will be a little bit easier because you have that mobility at quarterback and you're able to do a little bit more on the perimeter with him keeping the football. So you're not going to see as difficult of looks. Probably not going to have teams being quite as aggressive up front, which will help you not be wrong as often and be able to tee off on people as opposed to guess which direction they're going to slant or stunt. So I'm with you. I'm high on the Utah group this year. I think they probably know what they're up against. I think they're probably sick of hearing about some of the stuff from last year and it being a little up and down. But they have the bodies and the experience for this to be a really nice group.
Yeah, here's hoping because I want Utah back. I think like everybody that loves college football is better when Utah's in the mix for sure. At number 4, it's Alabama. Some people think this is the best group in the country. I'm not there yet. I think they lose their best player in Tyler Booker, and that's not just along the offensive line. That's their best player on the team last season. Having to replace him with Cam Dewberry will be incredibly difficult, but Dewberry has logged some solid reps at times at A&M in years past. I think center in Parker Brailsford's probably the best center in the country athletically. He's gotten bigger. He's gotten stronger. I have no concerns whatsoever with him. And then at right guard, Jaden Roberts was banged up all of last year. I mean, the guy was hurt all last year and still at times had some decent reps. Did struggle at times, but that was partly because of injury. So if he can stay healthy, should be in good shape. And I'm just hoping that Caden Proctor reaches his ceiling this year. I mean, that might happen. That might not happen. He's missed spring multiple times, but he's got an outrageously high ceiling. If he can reach his potential this year, then I think left tackle's got a chance to be an All-American. Center's got a chance to be an All-American. Right guard has a chance to be an All-American. There's not many teams that can say they have 3 guys that might have All-American candidacy. So right tackle still a position of concern naturally, but across the board, how do you feel about Bama's group?
Well, it starts with Brailsford up front. And you and I loved him at Washington. Obviously, we loved him in Alabama. You hear about some of the stuff he's doing in the weight room, which not a lot of people hear about, is what might be most impressive about him at his stature. And he's not huge. He's not really wide. But I really think playing next to Tyler Booker last year was the most beneficial thing that's happened to him in his career, because a lot of how Booker played, you saw Brailsford begin to play the same way and then some, and he wasn't that guy at Washington. And it's nothing against the Washington group. Nothing against how they operated there. It's just Booker did it a little bit different. I agree with you. I thought he was drafted where he was because he excelled past everybody else at his position to the distance that he did in college football last year. He was just that good. I'm a little bit worried about left tackle. Caden Proctor has had a little bit of a weight issue. It needs to be down for him to be great. And this is the second consecutive spring that he won't really go. Those are valuable reps that are going to be gone. Now, that could help your depth because they're going to somebody else And if they need to fill that void, they're going to be able to do that. So that's a little concerning. Jaden Roberts can absolutely be a road grader. I mean, he can be an earth mover. Mentally needs to get on the same page, have an understanding of the playbook, where things are headed, where things are going, and then obviously has to stay healthy. But you give me Proctor and his ability to move people with Brailsford and Roberts, we'll figure everything else out. I will say this, Greg, the one benefit that group had last year that not a lot of people focus on is you essentially had two lighter guards playing on the field at tight end. I mean, you had two guys that could operate as offensive linemen at times. I don't know if they'll have that benefit. But then flip that into you're bringing an old school offensive line coach in as your offensive coordinator, and Ryan Grubb's not going to have it any other way. There will be a downhill run game. How much they use it will depend on defenses and depend on the quarterback and the receivers and somehow that's operating. But he's going to have the ability to go north and south. It's going to be there. And I'm with you. I think Brailsford's the best center in college football. So you've got a bunch of power that's going to be packed into that group. A lot of them have played snaps together, log snaps together, high ceiling. And they're just still a little bit, there are a few more ifs than I think some people are referencing when they're talking about Alabama's group right now.
Yeah, perfectly fair. I think right tackle's an if. I think left guard's an if. I'm cautiously optimistic, though. You talk to folks down there, they feel they're not losing sleep over their right tackle right now, which I think is a welcome sign from Alabama faithful from where they were a year ago. At number 3,
hey, keep in mind, too, real quick on Bama, like Gino Vandermark played a decent amount last year. And when I asked Kalen DeBoer about him playing, I was wondering what was going on with the guy in front of him. And he made it very clear. This has nothing to do with the player in front of him. This is how he's been practicing and he's been performing. So you have another player there that is probably on the brink of being ready to be a full-time starter. And if that needs to be at one of the guard spots, either or, he probably has the ability to do that. So 56 could end up being a really valuable piece of that Alabama puzzle this year.
Yeah, definitely worth watching for sure. Forces went on the field at right guard at times last year, and that was not Jaden Roberts a little banged up for sure, so maybe that had to do with it. But when he was in there, he played well. So I think that's great to hear. Florida Gators are at number 3. And I think this group really, if you look at where they evolved to and the offense's identity, Billy Napier is going to be committed to running the football. Rob Sales, one of the best offensive line coaches in the country. You got Jake Slaughter back, who's big time at center. Him being back is massive. Austin Barber's back at left tackle, a guy that was generating some NFL draft buzz, decided to return. I do look at what you have back on the interior at guard spot. I think you could like those pieces. I would imagine you just got to figure out right tackle now. But for the most part, this should be one of the best groups in the country, assuming all those pieces could come together and kind of reach their potential collectively.
Well, we've mentioned multiple times during this interview of guys that are 5 stars, 4 stars, whatever that is, and they're just going to be good. Sometimes it does take some figuring out. And Kanijah Harris was one of those guys who it maybe took a little bit of time to kind of go figure that out. And Damian George was one of those guys. There was a reason at Alabama that Nick Saban told me face to face, like, we have to get Damian George on the field. And it was a guy that wasn't playing or starting at the time, but he recognized the talent and the ability and what he could give you if he did get things figured out. I think he settled in nicely at guard. I think he's able to utilize a little bit more of his ability there, play more aggressive, which is just more comfortable for him. And this is a scheme similar to kind of Baylor that we've talked about and a few of the other groups that once you have the wherewithal and the know-how, a lot of things can start to go your way. I'll just say this, and this doesn't mean it makes it easier. This is a very offensive lineman-friendly offense because you're getting guys going way far to the east and way far to the west, and you give them a lot of things to think about that don't allow them to tee off on you in a north and south manner. If you want to do that and be that aggressive, you better be very careful because if we're going the opposite direction, you're going to be in big trouble because you're not going to have anybody home because the plays we run can cut back all the way front side to the backside tackle and everywhere in between. And then some of the passing game that's built off the run game that looks very similar, you can benefit from as well. And you stay aggressive, which is what I love. And I think that's the main reason Billy does a lot of what he does is it allows his group to stay aggressive consistently. And they got some backs that can flat out get it. So now you got 4 or 5 guys that know each other, know the scheme and the system. Now they're playing more aggressive on a more consistent basis. I love Jake Slaughter. I love his east-west ability, great quickness, great athleticism. He had a few headaches here and there early in his career, but now he's comfortable and now he's confident. And I think this group, kind of like Auburn, has a chance to make a massive leap, probably based more on what their perception was last year than what the reality was. and this year sort of bring the common perception along with the reality of, man, that's a pretty good group and a fun group to watch.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching them this year. I think they got a chance to really take a big step collectively as an offense, assuming Lagway can kind of get back and be who he was at the end of the season, maybe even take a couple steps forward this offseason as well. At number 2, it's the Texas A&M Aggies. This is all about experience and depth. As simple as that. If you want an explanation, that's what it is. If you're going to boil it down to just one thing or 2 things, experience and depth. They actually had guys leave the program because they could not be guaranteed a starting spot because they felt so good about the 6, 7, 8 guys that could be in the rotation for the Aggies. You know, you got left tackle taken care of with Trey Zune. You got to love Fayu at center, who gave you some great reps at times last year. Basantis is back there at left guard. You feel good about him. And then the right side with Reed Adams at right guard and then Demetrius Crown over at right tackle. I think just across the board, it's a rock-solid starting 5 that's all played together. But what I like most, what kind of separates them from the Floridas, from the Alabamas, from the Miamis, and some of the teams that are right behind them, is just how much depth they have and capable replacements in the event in which one of those guys goes down for an extended period of time.
I don't think there's any doubt. I wouldn't be surprised if Mark Naboo finds a way to start at center at some point or when the season begins. So you legitimately have 2 right there. Both have played. Both have shown that they can be great players. Reuben Fatherly, I mean, he looks like a Vince McMahon #1 draft pick. Like, the guy looks like a pro wrestler when he walks off the field. He's a get off the bus first guy, but he's played some tackle and played the position, and he brings you real depth at that spot where not a lot of teams have it. I love Basantis getting after people. He's a glass eater. He's somebody that loves the physical portion of the game. Same thing with Reed Adams. Crown over. I mean, all you had to do is watch the way his brother played fullback for him a couple of years ago, and like, you knew he wasn't going to lighten up on anybody. So this group has as much nasty as anybody in college football, and they've added some real talent to it, and now they have real depth to go along with it. I'm really to the point now, Greg, the only thing that I think could potentially hold down Texas A&M's offensive line is whatever their offense has to be with some of the quarterback concerns. And those aren't great, and that's not a lot. That's not very many, but there are some there. So there were times last year where I felt like Colin Klein got away from letting this group control the game. And you're still feeling some things out. I don't know everything happening behind the scenes, so a lot can go into that. But this is a group this year that I think he should be able to lean on and say, you're the tone setters. We go where you take us, and allow that group to be the horses that pull the wagon, because I think they have all the makings of being that.
Yeah, it seems that way. I think they're going to lean into that heavily. I mean, I think they know that defensively they might not be as good, as dominant up front as they were a year ago. So maybe ball control the pace of the game, shrink the game, take the air out of the football. Like, I think that's what this group could develop into this season. At number 1, and to be honest with you, Cole, I think there's a gap between number 1 and everybody else. I am that bullish on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I just think they're that good. I already like what I saw from a true freshman last year in Anthony Knapp at left tackle. Yeah. I love that you've seen starters from last year leave in favor of, hey, they wanted the spot. They weren't guaranteed the spot. They leave. Well, because the guys that are coming back are that good. You lost Charles Jagusaw in the preseason last year. We saw him in 2 games be a difference maker at guard. He's now going to settle in at that spot. Emil Wagner gave you great reps at right tackle last year. At center, Ashton Craig got hurt in the first 4 games of the year. He's now back and healthy and 100%. And then Billy Shrouth, who I think is really, really solid there at left guard as well. I just think across the board, they're starting 5. I think this group has elevated beyond everybody else in college football. And frankly, I just don't think the conversation at 1 is that close with whoever would be sitting there in the 2nd spot, 3rd spot, or what have you.
And part of that, and I have the advantage of being around Mike Golick Jr. and being around Aaron Taylor on a regular basis, is just the room has never let itself get away from what it is and what it's supposed to be and what they want it to be. And whether that has been when Aaron Taylor played there, when Joe Moore was coaching there, or when Quentin Nelson was there, or Ronnie Stanley was there, like, it's just, they know what they need to be, and they've never allowed it to get too far away from that. And I think there's a bit of pride that comes with that. There's a bit of awareness and wherewithal that comes to that there's a standard that you better hold high and go out there and play that way. Now, what we're seeing this year, I think, is the ultimate benefit that is almost impossible to see when it's happening, of losing guys early in a season, whether that be preseason camp or the first couple of games, because as a fan, you're devastated. I mean, we talked to multiple people on our radio show before the season began last year, like, what are they going to do? losing both tackles in the preseason, having no idea where they're going to go. They're going to be young. It's going to be this guy. And then we're sitting there in New Orleans watching them in the Sugar Bowl, and they look like they're still going out there and being the part of the team that can help them win football games. Like you mentioned with Jagisaw, I'm walking around there in New Orleans on the field before the game, and I see 56, and I see the name on the jersey because the bowl games, they put their names on the jerseys. And I'm like, well, that's nice. They're letting him warm up a little bit and like feel like he's a part of the team. And then I actually see him in drills, and I'm like, well, hold on a second. I think I found you. And I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if that kid doesn't play a little bit just based on how he's handled himself. And then the next week comes in and is a big piece of what they had to have, what they needed. So I just think that they have multiple guys that want it. They want it on their shoulders. They want it to fall on them. They're okay with it being a line of scrimmage game. And it doesn't matter what spot they're put in, 4th and 1, 3rd and 12, go play guard this week, even though you haven't done it all year long. All right, cool. I'll go over there and I'll knock the hell out of somebody. And it's what Jagisaw did. And it's kind of what they do, whether it's a guard playing center, a center playing guard. They just understand what it's all about. They've got nasty. They have wherewithal. And I'll give Coach Freeman and his staff credit too. They have a brilliant offensive coordinator who allows them to go be that. This is not a group that they try to escape. It's not a group that they try to hide or cloud things around. They let them be that group, whether it's one starter back or all 5 starters back. And like you said, I can't even imagine what they would have been like if they had a couple guys back that stayed from a depth perspective. I mean, hell, they probably run 7 offensive linemen out there half the time. But it's going to be a fun group to watch. And I mean, listen, when you got Jeremiah Love toting the rock, he's going to make you look right a lot of the times, no matter what you're doing, because he's that talented. But this should be a fun group to watch in the run game because they know how to manage it, and they got a pretty good guy toting it behind them.
Now, well, there it is, 1 through 10. Notre Dame takes the top spot. Number 2, Texas A&M. Number 3, the Florida Gators. 4, Alabama. 5, the Utah Utes. 6 is Miami. 7 is Penn State. 8 is the Auburn Tigers. 9, that would be Clemson Tigers. And then at 10, the Oregon Ducks, and then a handful of teams in our honorable mention list. Cole, before we get you out of here, what did we totally screw up? What did I get wrong? What am I missing? Or are you kind of on board with the list that we put together?
I'm on board with a lot of it. There are a couple of teams, if we were just doing the top 25, I might have a little bit higher, a little bit lower than you. I do think Texas at least needs some of the conversation. You've got Trevor Gooseby, who's played a decent bit. Cole Hudson has played a lot. And I think there's an understanding there with Coach Flood of what it needs to be, what it's going to be. And Sark does such a good job of, again, stealing your eyes and forcing you to play a different way of defense that it can allow those guys to maybe develop a little bit earlier. And I'll throw out a couple other long shots at you that I think have a chance to be pretty good this year. Just teams we didn't bring up. I think Duke has a chance to be a pretty good team this year, a pretty good group. And you're adding a little bit more mobility at quarterback that a lot of people thought you were going to have last year, but you really didn't have. So now with Darian Mensah, that actually might be something that benefits them a little bit more and gives them some advantages. South Florida is not one that we would normally talk about, but watching them operate the last 2 years under Coach Golish and what they have coming back this year, getting comfortable with it, there's a lot technically and fundamentally that goes into play in that position that's different than other groups. It has more to do with when the play is ending and how to get lined up and how to be ready to snap the next snap. Once those things become second nature, you can excel very quickly at that group. And they got a lot of snaps that are returning. UTSA has all 5 guys back, and they're a group that's always going to be physical, always have a lot of size and strength at the line of scrimmage. And then don't look past Iowa State. Center right come back for that group. And you have the ultimate signal caller at quarterback that's always going to get you in the right stuff and always know where to be and where to go with the football. I think that's a group that might have a chance to surprise some people this fall as well.
I love it. Texas is one that was really, really close. They had to replace 3 out of the 5. And that to me was just a little bit. Now, I can project. I like their talent. They've recruited well. They developed well. There's just too many unknowns right now for them to be in the mix. And the guys that they're replacing with, I haven't seen them play a ridiculous amount of college football. So that was one that I'm not 100% there with, but they were close. And I'd be shocked at season's end if they're not in the mix. But going into the preseason, there's just too many unknowns. Is that fair?
No, it is. And I get it. I think they deserve a mention. I'm not saying top 15, top 10, but because I have seen Cole Hudson operate with no wrist tape and no gloves ever in his career, and that guy's going to be out there full time, I'm going to give him a little bit of an advantage.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's fair. Cole, great stuff, man. Appreciate you doing this with us. It's a fun exercise. Let's do it again.
Sounds good.
That'll do it for us here at Always College Football. Encourage all of you guys to like, to rate, to subscribe to the show. Whether that's on the podcast platform or on ESPN's College Football YouTube page. Lock it in, load it up, and we appreciate the support that you've shown the show. So for all of us here at Always College Football, for Mark, Jake, Jack, the other Jack, I'm Greg. We hope you have an amazing day, and remember, it's always college football. Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.